The stars were silent when Myra's ship drifted across the dark edge of space. She had been traveling alone for many days, hoping to reach a safe colony far from Earth. But her ship was old, and the engines could no longer carry her as they once did. Warning lights flashed on the control screen, and the hull groaned under pressure. Myra gripped the controls with tired hands, fighting to keep the ship steady. She had crossed storms of meteors, fields of ice, and paths of forgotten satellites. She had dreamed of rest, but instead, she was met with fire. A sudden wave of energy struck her ship, tearing through its systems. Sparks lit the cabin as the engine failed. The stars outside spun, and Myra's ship plunged toward the surface of an unknown planet. The fall was long and violent. Alarms screamed, metal rattled, and the ship tore through the planet's atmosphere. Heat scorched the glass of the cockpit until Myra could barely see. She braced herself, heart racing, whispering that she would survive. When the ship finally struck the ground, the world shook with a thunderous crash. The wreck rested in the shadow of tall crystal towers. The air was heavy but still safe to breathe. Myra unlocked the hatch and stepped outside, boots pressing into soil that shimmered faintly with blue light. The sky above was painted with two suns, one golden and one pale white, casting strange shadows across the land. Rivers of glowing liquid ran like veins between the rocks, and tall plants stretched high with leaves that sparkled as if made from glass. Myra stood still, stunned by the beauty. Her ship smoked behind her, broken beyond repair. She was alone on a world she did not know. She thought of calling for help, but her communicator was shattered in the crash. The silence of the strange land pressed against her, both calm and heavy, as if the planet itself was watching. She began to walk, searching for water or signs of shelter. Her footsteps echoed strangely, as if the ground itself carried her sound. Soon she noticed the shimmering towers around her were not natural stone. They were carved with lines, symbols, and shapes that told stories. They looked like the work of a people, a civilization. Someone had lived here, or perhaps still lived here. Myra's heart beat faster. She was not the first to touch this place. As she reached the base of one tall tower, she felt a change in the air. A cool breeze brushed her face, though no wind moved the leaves above. The ground shivered faintly, and then she heard it, a soft voice, carried across the air like a song. She turned sharply, scanning the strange land around her. Two figures appeared from the glowing mist near the river. They walked side by side, their steps smooth and in perfect rhythm. At first Myra thought they were reflections of each other, but as they came closer, she saw they were real. Twin daughters of an alien race, tall and graceful, with silver eyes that shone like moons. Their hair flowed like threads of light, and their faces were calm, almost too calm, as if carved from the same design. Myra stepped back, unsure if she should run or stand her ground. The twins stopped a few steps away, their eyes fixed on her. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, in one voice, as if sharing a single thought, they said, "You are alone." The sound chilled Myra. It was not a threat, yet it was not a comfort either. She wanted to ask who they were, but before she could speak, the twins spoke again. "He is waiting." Myra's lips parted, but the words stuck in her throat. The twins tilted their heads slightly, their silver eyes unblinking. Then, still in unison, they said the words that froze Myra's heart. "Be our father's bride." Myra's breath caught. She stared at them, unsure if she had heard correctly. Their tone was calm, not demanding, not angry, but steady, like a command that had already been decided. She shook her head slowly, trying to understand. She had come here by accident, a traveler lost, yet these strange beings spoke as if they had been waiting for her. Her voice finally found strength. I am not here for this. I only came because my ship fell. The twins did not move. Their eyes glowed brighter, reflecting the light of the twin suns above. Together, they answered softly, "It does not matter. You are here. He is waiting." Myra felt the ground beneath her feet pulse faintly, as if the planet itself agreed with their words. She looked back at her broken ship, then forward at the alien daughters, and for the first time since her fall, she felt fear not of being alone, but of being chosen for something she did not yet understand. And the twins, still watching, smiled with the same perfect expression, as if her answer had already been given. Myra's heart pounded as she faced the two alien daughters. Their silver eyes glimmered with the light of the twin suns, and their voices still echoed in her ears. "Be our father's bride." The words carried a weight she could not ignore. She had been a traveler, a pilot of a failing ship, and now these strange beings spoke as if her future had already been chosen. She took a cautious step back. Her boots crunched against the glowing soil, but the twins did not move. They stood side by side, watching her with the stillness of statues. Their calmness was almost more frightening than open anger. Myra forced her voice to remain steady. "I do not know who you are, or who your father is. I am not from this world. My ship crashed here by accident. I am not what you are looking for." For a brief moment, silence filled the space between them. Then the twins raised their hands in perfect harmony, pointing toward the crystal towers behind them. Their voices joined once more. "You are from the stars. He has waited for one like you. Come with us." Myra shook her head quickly. "I cannot just follow strangers. I need to fix my ship. I need to survive." But even as she spoke, her eyes drifted to the broken vessel behind her. Smoke still rose from its cracked frame, and sparks flickered from the ruined engine. The truth pressed into her mind. The ship could not fly again. Even if she had the tools, even if she had endless time, she could not repair it alone. She was stranded. The daughters must have seen the doubt in her eyes, because they spoke again, their voices softer now. "Your path has ended here. But another path begins. Our father is waiting." Myra's throat tightened. She wanted to refuse, to turn away, but her instincts told her that running would not help. These beings knew this land. They were not lost. They had a purpose, and somehow, she had fallen into it. She breathed deeply, trying to keep her thoughts calm. "Why would your father wait for me? I am only human. I am no queen. I am no bride for anyone." The twins exchanged a glance, and for the first time, their movements were not perfectly matched. One tilted her head slightly to the left, while the other's eyes narrowed faintly. But when they turned back to Myra, their voices were once again as one. "You are human. That is enough." The words confused her. Enough for what? She wanted answers, but before she could press further, the twins began to walk toward the glowing river. Their steps were quiet, graceful, and filled with a strange confidence. After a few paces, they stopped, and looked back at her. Their hands stretched out as if inviting her to follow. Myra stood frozen. Every instinct warned her that walking into the unknown with them was dangerous. Yet the other truth was sharper: she had no food, no clean water, no working tools. Alone, she would not survive for long. With them, at least she would find people, perhaps shelter, perhaps a chance to understand this world. She exhaled slowly, the weight of the decision heavy on her chest. At last she took a step forward. The twins smiled together, their silver eyes glowing brighter, and continued along the riverbank. The path they followed was strange and beautiful. The ground shone faintly with blue veins that pulsed like living light. Plants with tall glass-like leaves bent as if bowing when the twins passed. The air was filled with a hum, soft and constant, as though the planet itself was singing a low song. Myra glanced at her guides and noticed they moved without hesitation, as if they had walked this path many times before. She tried to speak again. "If I follow you, will your father answer me? Will he tell me why you said those words?" The twins answered without looking back. "He will speak. He will show. He has waited for you." The walk stretched on, and the sky began to change. The golden sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, while the pale white sun brightened and filled the air with silver light. Myra felt as if she was walking between two worlds, caught in a balance of day and night. The longer she followed, the stronger the sense of destiny pressed against her. At last they reached the base of a towering structure. Unlike the scattered towers near the crash site, this one was larger, brighter, and alive with carvings that glowed faintly. It looked like a palace built from crystal and light. The doors were tall and curved, shaped like wings that reached toward the sky. Myra's breath caught at the sight. It was a place built not for shelter, but for majesty. The twins stopped at the base of the stairs. Together they turned to Myra, their faces calm yet filled with an unspoken power. Their voices joined once more. "Here is his home. Here is the heart of our world. Our father waits for you." Myra swallowed hard. Her hands trembled, but she forced herself to climb the first step. She told herself she was not walking into a trap. She was walking into an answer, into a truth that might change everything. The crystal doors shimmered as if alive, and Myra felt the weight of unseen eyes watching her from within. She took another step forward, and another, until she stood before the towering entrance. The twins raised their hands, and the doors opened with a sound like ringing bells. Light spilled out, bright and warm, touching Myra's face. And from the heart of that light, a deep voice rumbled, strong and gentle at the same time. "Human. You have come." Myra froze at the words, her heart racing faster than ever before. The light from the great crystal doors poured over Myra as she stepped inside the palace. Her eyes blinked against the brightness, but slowly the glow softened, revealing a wide hall filled with shapes and colors unlike anything she had seen before. The floor was polished like glass, yet it pulsed faintly, as if light itself flowed beneath it. Tall pillars rose on each side, carved with spirals of stars and strange creatures with wings of flame. Myra walked carefully, her footsteps echoing in the vast silence. The twin daughters stayed close behind her, moving like shadows that never broke their rhythm. Ahead, at the far end of the hall, a massive throne rose from the floor. It was not built of stone or wood but grown from crystal, shining with hues of gold and silver. The throne pulsed like a living heart, each glow spreading warmth into the air. Upon that throne sat the figure she had been brought to meet. The alien king. He was unlike his daughters. Where they were slender and graceful, he was towering and broad, his frame strong enough to fill the hall. His skin shimmered like metal touched by fire, and his eyes burned with the deep glow of distant stars. When he leaned forward, the very throne seemed to bend with him, not in weakness but in unity, as though it was part of him. Myra stopped at the edge of the shining floor. Her heart raced. She had never stood before a presence so heavy and yet so calm. The air itself seemed to bend toward him. For a long moment, silence filled the space. Then the king's deep voice rolled across the chamber like thunder wrapped in kindness. "Human. You have come." The words were simple, but they struck Myra's chest with strange power. She drew in a breath and answered carefully, her voice steadier than she felt. "I did not come by choice. My ship fell. I was lost." The king's glowing eyes did not blink. His gaze held her as if he could see into every thought she carried. "The stars carried you here. It was not chance. It was the call of this world, and of me." Myra frowned, her mind filled with questions. She looked at the twin daughters, who now stood at each side of the throne. Their eyes glimmered proudly, as if they had brought home a long-awaited gift. Turning back to the king, Myra shook her head. "I do not understand. Why would you call me? I am only one person. I am no queen. I am no bride for a king." The king's deep voice rumbled again, softer this time. "You are human. That is more than enough." The words echoed the daughter's earlier claim, but they gave Myra no peace. Her chest tightened with frustration. "What is it about humans that you need? Why me?" The king rose slowly from his throne. The crystal beneath his hands glowed brighter, as if his strength flowed into it. When he stood, he seemed taller than the pillars, a being of power and age. He stepped forward, each movement calm but filled with weight. "When the stars were young, our kind walked beside yours," the king said. "Your ancestors were strong of will, unbroken in spirit. They lifted us when we fell into despair. They gave us courage when our skies darkened. That bond was lost in time. But I have seen visions of its return. I saw a human standing here, in this hall, and with her, our strength would rise again." Myra listened, her breath uneven. Part of her wanted to believe his words, but another part resisted. She remembered Earth, her home filled with struggle, with weakness as much as strength. She was not a hero. She was just Myra, a traveler who had been running from her own failures. She lowered her eyes. "I am not the one you think I am. I cannot save your world." The king stopped before her, towering but not threatening. He lowered his great head, his glowing eyes steady. "You carry what no other carries. The will to stand even when all has fallen. That is why you are here. That is why you were chosen." Myra's hands trembled. She wanted to deny it again, but the weight of his words sank deep. She had survived the crash when many would have surrendered. She had stepped into the unknown when fear could have held her back. She was standing here now, facing something far greater than herself. Perhaps there was truth in his claim. The daughters spoke at once, their voices ringing like silver bells. "Be his bride. Be the bond. Bring back the light." Myra turned toward them, her throat dry. She did not answer. Her mind spun in a storm of questions. What would it mean to accept? What would it cost to refuse? She looked back at the king, who stood in silence, waiting not with force but with patience. His presence filled the chamber, yet he did not reach to bind her. He only watched, letting her choice weigh heavy on her own heart. The hall grew quiet. The twin suns outside shifted, sending golden and silver light through the crystal walls. They painted Myra in colors of day and night, as if the universe itself was holding her between two paths. At last the king spoke again, his voice soft but firm. "Do not answer now. Walk my halls. See my world. Learn the truth of what we are. Then choose." Myra drew a long breath. She did not know what awaited her, but she knew one thing: her life would never be the same again. Myra walked slowly through the palace halls, her steps echoing across the shining floors. The king's words weighed heavily in her mind. He had spoken of ancient bonds, of visions, of a destiny that tied her to this place. Yet she was still only one traveler, a woman whose ship had fallen. She could not understand why this world looked at her as if she was the answer to its survival. The twin daughters guided her in silence. Their silver eyes glimmered, but they spoke no words now. They led her through corridors lined with tall windows, each one carved from glowing crystal. Through them, Myra saw the vast city spread out below the palace. Towers rose like spears of light, rivers shimmered as they wound between streets, and creatures with feathered wings glided through the skies. The city looked alive, yet strangely quiet, as if its heart was slowing down. At last, the daughters stopped before a wide chamber. The doors opened without touch, and Myra stepped inside. The chamber was filled with walls of stone, darker than the crystal around them. The air here was older, heavier, carrying the scent of dust and time. Carvings lined every wall, great murals cut deep into the stone. Myra's eyes widened as she studied them. The carvings showed beings with silver eyes like the daughters and glowing forms like the king. They stood beside humans. Clear, unmistakable humans. She saw men and women holding hands with the alien people, standing together as equals. Some carvings showed them building towers, others raising weapons against enemies, and others simply sharing food under strange suns. She stepped closer, her heart beating faster. Her hand brushed across one carving of a human holding a sphere of light, offering it to the alien king. The king, younger and smaller than the one she had met, bowed his head to accept it. "This cannot be," Myra whispered. "Humans have never spoken of this." The daughters moved to her side. One raised her hand and touched the carving with her long fingers. Their voices, as always, joined together. "It was long ago. Before your people knew themselves. The bond was real. The bond was broken." Myra turned toward them, confusion sharp in her eyes. "Broken? Why? What happened?" The daughters lowered their heads, their silver hair falling forward like a curtain of light. "Fear. Distance. Time. The humans returned to their stars. Our father was left with silence. His heart weakened, and so did our people." Myra's chest tightened. The carvings felt alive, as if they told a story her own history had forgotten. She wanted to ask more, but the chamber itself seemed to whisper. She walked further along the walls, tracing the story with her eyes. The carvings grew darker. She saw shapes of war, storms of fire, towers crumbling, rivers turning black. The humans in the carvings were gone, and the alien people stood alone, their heads bowed. At the final wall, Myra stopped. It showed a single figure, human, small compared to the rest, yet standing tall. The figure stood before the alien king, holding out empty hands, not weapons, not light, just hands. The king reached forward, his great form bending down, as if ready to accept. Myra stared at it, a shiver running through her. She knew what it meant. The vision the king spoke of was not new. It had been carved long before her birth, long before her journey. She was not the first human chosen, but perhaps she was the one who had come when the world needed it again. The daughters' voices broke the silence. "You see now. You understand. Our father waits because he believes. He believes the bond can return." Myra turned to them, her voice sharp with doubt. "But why me? Out of all the humans, why did your vision choose me? I am not special. Their silver eyes glowed brighter. You lived when your ship fell. You walked when fear could have held you still. You listened when you could have turned away. That is enough. Myra wanted to argue, but her voice failed. She remembered the storm of fire as her ship crashed, the terror that filled her chest, the choice to open the hatch and step into this unknown world instead of hiding inside broken metal. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps that small will to keep moving was the only thing that set her apart. She turned back to the carvings. Her hand rested on the stone figure of the lone human reaching toward the king. She wondered if those carvings had been waiting for her, or if she was only the next in a line of many forgotten travelers. The chamber grew silent again. Only the faint hum of the palace filled the air. Myra closed her eyes for a moment, letting the weight of the truth settle on her shoulders. This was not only about her survival anymore. The bond that had once been broken was now placed before her to mend. When she opened her eyes, the daughters were watching her closely. Their voices, soft but steady, filled the chamber. Without you, our father will fade. Without him, our people will fall. Myra drew in a slow breath. The carvings, the stories, the silence of the city outside, all of it pressed into her. She felt the burden of a world resting against her shoulders, and yet she knew she could not decide here, not yet. She needed more. She needed to see this land, to feel its truth beyond the stones. Her voice was low but firm. I will walk further. I will see more before I decide. The daughters bowed their heads together. Then we shall guide you. As they led her out of the chamber, Myra cast one last look at the final carving. The lone human's hands still reached toward the alien king. The image burned into her memory, a silent reminder that her choices were no longer hers alone. The night had come to the alien world. Myra stood on the balcony of the Crystal Palace, looking out over the silent city. Two moons floated high above, silver and pale, casting soft light across the towers. The streets below glowed faintly with rivers of blue fire that wound like veins through the land. It was beautiful, yet Myra felt the weight of loneliness pressing against her. Behind her, the twin daughters waited. They had said little since leaving the chamber of carvings. Their silver eyes followed her closely, but they gave her space, as if they knew her thoughts needed silence. Myra rested her hands on the railing, the cool crystal smooth under her fingers. She thought of the carvings she had seen, the bond between humans and these people, the unity once shared. She thought of the king's words, his belief that she was the one to restore what had been lost. And she thought of the daughters' plea: without her, their father would fade, and with him, their people. Her chest tightened. The choice they wanted her to make was larger than anything she had faced before. She had lived her life traveling between worlds, surviving one step at a time, but never had she carried the fate of an entire people. She whispered to herself, "How can I decide this?" The sound of soft footsteps drew her from her thoughts. The daughters approached together, their voices gentle as they spoke in unison. "You are troubled. Your heart is heavy." Myra turned toward them. "Of course I am troubled. You ask me to be your father's bride. You ask me to tie my life to a world I do not know. How can I choose something like that?" The daughters lowered their heads slightly, their silver hair glowing in the moonlight. "Because choice is the heart of what makes you human. And that is why our father believes in you." Myra frowned. "Choice? You speak as if I still have one. From the moment I crashed, you acted as if my path was already decided." The daughters shook their heads together. "We guided you here, but the decision is yours. He will not force you. We will not force you. The bond cannot live through chains. It must live through wool. Their words stirred something inside her. She thought of the king's patience, the way he had told her to see his world before answering. He had not threatened her. He had not demanded. He had only waited. Still, doubt clung to her. She looked back over the balcony at the city. If I refuse, what happens to your people? The daughters' voices softened, almost like a whisper. He will fade. His strength is tied to the bond that once was. Without him, the light of this city will dim. Our people will lose their heart. We will fall into silence. The answer stung Myra. She felt as though their world was being placed in her hands, and she had not asked for it. And if I stay? If I agree? The daughter's silver eyes glowed brighter. Then he will rise again. Our people will be lifted. The bond will return. You will not be alone. You will be the bridge between stars. Myra turned away quickly, her mind spinning. She pressed her hands to the railing and stared out at the horizon, where the faint edge of dawn began to paint the sky. She wanted to return home, to Earth, to the familiar. Yet she also knew she had no ship, no way to leave. Even if she could she live with the thought that she had turned her back on an entire people who had reached out for her? Her chest ached with the weight of it. She remembered the storm that had nearly killed her, the fire of the crash, the silence of waking on a strange world. She had survived because she refused to give up. That same stubborn will now fought inside her, telling her she could not walk away from this. The daughters stepped closer, their voices blending into one gentle tone. We know your heart struggles. We know your fear. But we also know your courage. That is why you are here. Myra closed her eyes. Courage. The word echoed in her thoughts. She remembered the carvings, the lone human reaching empty hands to the alien king. That figure had not carried weapons or crowns, only the strength to stand and offer a choice. Perhaps that was all she needed to give. Her voice trembled, but she spoke. I have not decided yet. But I will not run. I will see this through. The daughters bowed their heads, their silver hair shining in the moonlight. That is all we ask. The first rays of dawn touched the palace, filling the hall with gold and silver light. Myra stood between it, caught in the space of choice, knowing that her answer would shape not only her own life but the fate of an entire world. For now, she did not speak the final word. But in her heart, the weight of the decision grew heavier, pulling her closer to the moment when she would have to decide. The first light of dawn spread across the alien sky when the king called for Myra again. She entered the throne hall with heavy steps, her heart pounding. The twin daughters walked beside her, silent as shadows. The crystal walls glowed with gold and silver light, filling the chamber with a soft radiance. The king sat tall upon his throne, his glowing eyes fixed on her. When she stopped at the center of the hall, his deep voice rumbled through the air. Human, you have seen our halls. You have walked among our stories. But before you decide, you must prove the truth of your spirit. Not to me, not to my daughters, but to the bond itself. Myra lifted her chin. What do you mean? The king's gaze grew brighter. There is a place outside these walls. A place of storms and shifting winds. No one may guide you there, no one may protect you. If you have the strength to walk through it, then you will stand as the bond demands. If you fall, then you were never meant to be. Myra's breath caught. A trial. She thought of the storm he spoke of and felt fear press into her chest. Yet part of her stirred with defiance. She had survived worse. She had survived the fall from the stars itself. She would not turn back now. She nodded. I will face it. The daughters bowed, their silver eyes glowing with quiet pride. The king rose from his throne, towering in silence. Then go. Beyond the city you will find the storm fields. Walk through them, and return. Do not hide. Do not wait for the skies to clear. Only then will the truth be shown. Myra's throat tightened, but she answered with steady words. I will return. The journey began at the edge of the city. The daughters led her as far as the gates, then stopped. Their hands pressed together, and their voices joined in one final message. You walk alone now. Trust your will. Trust your steps. Myra gave a faint nod and stepped beyond the gates. The air grew heavy, the light dimmer, as she moved closer to the storm fields. The land stretched wide before her, covered in dark stone and glowing cracks of blue fire. Above, clouds swirled in violent circles, flashing with lightning that tore the sky apart. Her first steps were steady. The wind pushed against her, cold and sharp, but she kept moving. Every few breaths, a flash of lightning struck the ground in the distance, shattering stone into dust. The sound rolled like endless drums, shaking the earth beneath her feet. Fear whispered in her mind. Turn back, it said. No one could walk through this and live. But she forced the thought aside. She remembered the king's words, remembered the carvings of humans standing tall beside his people. If she ran now, she would not only lose their faith, she would lose her own. The wind grew stronger. Dust whipped against her face, stinging her skin. Myra pulled her jacket tighter and lowered her head. She chose each step carefully, planting her boots against the shifting ground. Then the storm broke fully around her. Lightning struck close, blinding her eyes with white fire. Thunder roared so loud it felt like her chest would burst. The ground split in places, blue fire rising from beneath like rivers of flame. Myra stumbled but kept her balance, teeth clenched in defiance. Her body cried for her to stop. Her legs trembled, her breath came in ragged gasps. But her heart beat with something stronger than fear. A voice inside her whispered, keep moving. One step more. Always one step more. She pressed forward, each step a battle. She thought of the daughters, their plea for their father. She thought of the king, his patient eyes watching her. She thought of Earth, her own people who had once walked beside these beings. She thought of herself, a lone traveler who had always fought to survive. And then, at last, the storm began to thin. The winds calmed, the thunder softened, and the cracks in the ground closed. Myra pushed through the final wall of dust and found herself standing on the far side of the fields. The air was still, the sky clear. Behind her, the storm raged on, but she had passed through it. Her knees weakened, and she fell to the ground, breathing hard. Sweat clung to her skin, her muscles ached, but a fierce pride burned in her chest. She had faced the storm. She had not broken. When she finally rose, she turned back toward the city. The palace towers shimmered in the distance, calling her home. Step by step, she made her way back, every movement heavy but filled with strength. At the gates, the daughters were waiting. Their silver eyes shone brighter than before. As she approached, their voices rose together, filled with wonder. You walked the storm. You did not fall. You have proven the bond. Myra's chest lifted with a deep breath. She gave a tired smile, though her body still trembled. I told your father I would return. And I have. The daughters bowed deeply, their voices soft with respect. Then you are ready. Myra followed them back into the city, back toward the throne hall. The trial had tested every part of her, but she had stood unbroken. She did not yet know what final choice she would make, but she knew this much: she was no longer only a lost traveler. She had become something more. And soon, she would face the king again, not as a stranger, but as one who had proven her spirit in the heart of the storm. The throne hall shimmered with golden light as Myra entered once more. The long walk back from the storm fields had drained her body, yet her steps did not falter. She had faced the test and returned alive. The twin daughters walked at her side in silence, their silver eyes glowing with pride. The sound of her boots against the crystal floor echoed through the chamber until she stopped before the alien king. The king rose from his throne, taller and stronger than any being she had ever seen, yet his eyes carried a deep calm. He looked down at her and spoke with a voice that filled the hall. You walked through the storm. You did not break. You stood where others would have fallen. Human, you have proven yourself. Myra lifted her chin. Her chest still rose and fell with tired breaths, but her voice was steady. I told you I would return. And I did. Not for glory, not for reward, but because I chose to stand. The daughters bowed low, their voices joining in one clear tone. Father, she has proven the bond. She has carried the storm and returned to you. The king stepped forward, his massive form casting long shadows. Yet his movement was slow, respectful, as if he approached not as a ruler but as an equal. You came to us as a stranger from the stars. You could have turned away, but you did not. You listened to our plea, you faced our trial, and now you stand here as more than a traveler. You stand as a bridge. Myra felt her heart stir. For so long she had been alone, wandering from place to place, never certain of her place in the galaxy. Yet here, on this alien world, she had become part of something larger. She looked at the king, then at the daughters, and understood the truth of their request. I know what you ask of me, she said slowly. You want me to be your bond, your bride in spirit, a symbol of unity. It is not an easy choice. My life was my own. My journey was my own. Yet when I saw your halls, when I read your carvings, I saw that once, long ago, our peoples walked together. That bond was broken. If I stay, perhaps it can be restored. The king lowered his head, his glowing eyes softening. I do not seek to bind you in chains. I do not seek to take your freedom. What I ask is your hand in unity. Stand with us, not as a captive, but as a partner. With you, our people will find hope again. Without you, the bond may fade forever. Myra's throat tightened. The weight of his words pressed on her heart. She thought of Earth, of the stars she had once chased, of the endless silence of her journeys. She thought of the daughters, their voices filled with trust, and the king, whose strength was balanced by patience. In that moment she realized her choice was not just for herself. It was for a future larger than any single life. She stepped forward, placing her hand upon her chest. Then I accept. I will stay. I will be your bond, not as a stranger but as one who believes in the strength of unity. The daughters cried out with joy, their voices ringing like music across the hall. Their silver eyes glowed so brightly it was as if stars had been lit inside them. They moved to Myra's side and placed their hands over hers, their touch warm with trust. The king bowed his massive head, a gesture of honor rarely given. Then it is done. A new bond is born. Human and our kind shall walk together once more. The hall filled with light. The crystals along the walls pulsed with energy, glowing brighter as if the palace itself rejoiced. A low hum spread through the air, the ancient resonance of the bond that had once tied their peoples together. Myra felt it in her bones, a warmth that filled her with strength. For the first time in years, she did not feel alone. She had found a place where her courage was not just survival, but hope. She had found a people who saw her not as an outsider, but as the key to something greater. The king raised his hand, and his deep voice carried across the hall. Let it be known to all. A daughter of earth has chosen to stand with us. From this day, our bond is restored. Our strength is shared. Our future is one. The daughters smiled at Myra, their faces shining with joy. You were alone when you came. Now you are not. You are family, and together we will protect the bond. Myra looked up at the king, then at the glowing hall around her. Her journey had begun with fire and crash, with fear and doubt. But it had led her here, to a place where courage had meaning, where unity had power. She knew the path ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, dangers, and questions yet unanswered. But she also knew she would not face them alone. The bond was real. And she had chosen it. As the light of the crystals bathed her in warmth, Myra stood tall, her heart steady. She was no longer just a traveler, no longer just a survivor. She was the bridge between worlds, the living proof of what humanity could bring. And in that moment, humanity had once again changed the fate of an alien world.